Chapter 831. Xianxia as his clone in the galaxy that belonged to the immortals in one of the four great true worlds. True Morning Tao world, far from the barren lands of divine essence, was an incredibly strange celestial body. It was formed of 108 cultivation planets. From the distance, they looked like a leaf that was filled with veins. It floated in the galaxy with brilliant light shining 100,000 feet from it. The great and mighty pressure that was formed when those 108 cultivation planets gathered together intimidated all those around them. This was an area that was incredibly famous within the galaxy that belonged to immortals. Within there was Great Leaf Immortal Sect's first sect. An endless amount of people weaved in and out of the planets within that celestial body. The people that were moving about the place were all disciples of Great Leaf Disciple Sect that were either going out or returning. At first glance, there were several hundreds of thousands of them moving about. This might seem like a huge number, but compared to the gigantic 108 cultivation planets, these hundreds of thousands of people were incredibly tiny and insignificant. Based on the sect scale, the number of disciples within Great Leaf Immortal Sect would definitely be extremely great. At the instant, all 100,000 of Su Ming's faces shouted at the same time within the Western Ring Nebula's foreign land in the barren lands of divine essence. There was a change in a cultivation planet within the deepest recesses of the celestial body that looked like a leaf. That place was filled with green grass. There was a light gust of wind that swept through the land in that world. The sky was blue, and there were a few white clouds moving about gently in the sky, filling this place with an air of tranquility. There was a lake nearby, and a middle-aged man sat by its side. He was dressed in a sackcloth and held a fishing pole in his hands. He looked as if he was taking a cat nap. There was a peaceful expression on his face, along with a faint smile. Yet by his side were countless wild wolves lying in ambush among the grass. Red light was shining in the wolves' eyes as they stared at the middle-aged man while not moving a single inch. Yet during that moment, a faint crease suddenly appeared between the middle-aged man's brows. This action immediately made that peaceful expression on his face disappear. He slowly opened his eyes, which were long and narrow. This pair of eyes caused the man to seem like he possessed a strange charm, but at that moment, a focused glint tainted with a dark look gradually appeared within those eyes. "I do not like wayward children," the middle-aged man mumbled to himself. He still held on to the fishing pole with his right hand while slowly closing his eyes, as if nothing had happened. Within Western Ring Nebula's foreign land in the barren lands of divine essence, Su Ming's low roars were echoing in the air. His soul was rapidly burning away. The burnt area of his soul rapidly turned from a 7/10 to 8/10 as he furiously fought against Xianxia's will. The roars and booms that came from Xianxia will prevented Su Ming from spreading his soul out any further. To Xianxia, Su Ming should already be near the end of his life. Just a little more, and his burning soul would completely scatter away. At that moment, Xianxia would not even need to do anything. His opponent would just disappear into the wind on his own. There was a determined expression on the 100,000 faces of Su Ming at that moment. He did not show any intention of changing his mind. Even if most of his soul had already been burnt, as long as Di Qian did not get out of his body, he would not give up. This was a gamble with his life on the Lian, as well as a competition of patience, one where he and Di Qian would both have to make a choice. Kites have strings. That's why even if they flow above the 9 heavens, they will still be controlled by someone and won't have a free will. If I can't break off that string throughout my entire life and fly freely in the sky, then what is the difference between me living and dying? Only when I break this string will I be able to taste freedom. A determined light shone within all the eyes of the 100,000 faces that belonged to Su Ming. As his soul burned, another portion of it crumbled away. At that moment, the middle-aged man in a sackcloth near the lake on the plain of grass within Great Leaf Immortal Sect in the galaxy that belonged to the immortals in Morning Tao world opened his eyes once again. This time, besides a grim look, there was also seriousness in his expression. However, the hand which held the fishing pole was still very stable. Ripples suddenly appeared on the water in the lake before him. Once the middle-aged man lifted his right hand, a golden fish was yanked out from the water with its mouth around the fishing hook. As water droplets scattered everywhere, one of the wild wolves from the grass swiftly leaped up and charged towards that golden fish with its mouth wide open, about to swallow it whole. I do not like those who take the initiative. The middle-aged man's eyes became even more grim. He did not seem to have done anything, but at the instant he said those words, the wild wolf that had leaped up suddenly shuddered and withered away. Its teeth fell off and its fur shriveled. Its body instantly turned into dust, and even the teeth and fur that had fallen off turned into ashes before reaching the lake, as if 1,000 years had passed for the body of the wolf in an instant. The Abyss Builder's inborn ability. What a despicable race, but also a race that makes others envious. The middle-aged man's face turned even darker. He slowly stood up and let go of the fishing pole. With a turn, he stepped into the air. His body vanished instantly. When he reappeared, he had already moved an unknown amount of distance and reached Great Leaf Immortal Sect's first sect. When he appeared here, he was no longer dressed in a sackcloth, but had adorned a golden long robe and had a golden crown on his head. There was also a dignified expression on his face. Wherever he went, all the cultivators that saw him would immediately bow down and worship him. He continued onward until he stood at the center of the shattered continents, right on top of the tallest altar in that place, beside the corpse that had been sealed there for numerous years. He looked at the young man with the pale face, frail body, and shut eyes before him. The middle-aged man remained silent, but suddenly, Su Ming's real body, which was the corpse that was held here, suddenly showed signs of withering away. Wrinkles swiftly appeared on its skin, and its hair gradually lost its luster. Those were the signs that its soul was about to die. Once the soul died, the corpse would wither away, and the soul would also scatter away. Due to this scene, the expression of the middle-aged man, Di Qian, changed. He had not believed in what he sensed previously, but now that the truth was placed before him, he became certain that Su Ming was facing a danger that he could not hope to stand against. He was burning his soul at that moment, and 9/10 of it were already gone. Either you have truly run into a life-and-death situation, or you have discovered a clue. If it's the former, I'll let it slide, but if it's the latter... Di Qian let out a cold harumph. He was still frowning. There was a unique form of fusion between his and Su Ming's souls. If Su Ming died, then he would also be injured badly. In fact, his level of cultivation would no longer increase even a single bit for the rest of his life. In truth, his plan had been a gamble all along. I only need another 300 years to succeed. 300 years. Di Qian fell silent and stared at Su Ming's physical body without saying a single word. When a large amount of black patches appeared on the skin and a rotting stench also spread out while his hair fell off, for the first time, Di Qian's heart was shaken. 95 hundredths. 95 hundredths. I've already burned more than 95 hundredths of my soul, but Di Qian still hasn't appeared. Could I be wrong? Su Ming had already reached his limit in terms of burning his soul in Western Ring Nebula's foreign land, and Yikang's laughter echoed in the air. The 100,000 faces that belonged to Su Ming shook at that instant. If he continued, he would truly die. If he gave up, he would still have some life left, but he was already at this point of his plan. After a short period of silence, a resolute and ruthless expression appeared on his face. If I'm wrong, then I will be freed from all this from now on. This is my choice, I will accept it. Without any hesitation, the flames burning Su Ming's soul rose once again and started devouring the last 5/100ths of his soul. If he split that remaining portion into 5 parts, then he only had 4 left, and it was still becoming less. As Su Ming's soul continued to burn, he heard a faint voice in his heart, though he did not know whether it was just a figment of his imagination. This world shall be built for Abyss. That voice said 7 words, and they were the same ones Su Ming had heard when he was still in Yin Death region. This time, even Yikang's will was shaken. It had seen lunatics before, but it had never seen someone as insane as Su Ming. He had already arrived at this point, but he was still continuing. He was using his life to gamble. Di Qian, who was in the galaxy that belonged to the Immortals, also trembled. The relaxed look on his face disappeared at that moment. A ferocious look appeared in his eyes, which were now covered in blood capillaries. He stared intently at Su Ming's physical body, watching as it rapidly decayed, and his heart shook even more violently. When there was only 3 parts of the original 5 of Su Ming's soul that were not burnt, Di Qian trembled lightly. This was an invisible fight, a battle of arts that could not be seen. It was a fight where both parties competed to see just who was more ruthless and who was the first to fall back. Di Qian's expression twisted. He was unwilling to accept that his plan would truly fail just like this, but he had no way of knowing whether Su Ming was truly facing a life-and-death danger at this moment or whether all of this was just him fighting back. With an internal struggle, Di Qian watched the decay on Su Ming's physical body become even worse. In fact, he no longer had the shape of a human when there were only 2 parts left of his soul. That flow of time seemed to have been stretched out in an invisible manner. This was torture and a test to Su Ming, and it was the same for Di Qian. When there was only 1 part left of Su Ming's soul, Di Qian lifted his head and let out a furious roar towards the sky. There was anger within that roar, along with a resignation that he had to terminate his own plan, as well as an enmity towards time. As Di Qian roared, he lifted his right hand and fiercely struck the center of his brows. At the instant he did so, a golden light erupted from within Su Ming's soul, which was at the brink of unconsciousness. That ray of light swiftly flew out from within his soul. A furious roar came from within Su Ming's soul and echoed faintly in the air as that golden light disappeared. Su Ming was familiar with that roar. It was Di Qian's voice. In that invisible battle of arts, Su Ming had won. He laughed long and hard. A resistance against fate that had lasted for countless years was contained within that laughter, along with Su Ming's determination and resolution. He won in that battle of arts and gained his freedom. If he could get through Yikang's disaster, then from that time on, he would be free from everyone's control over him. He would have endless possibilities ahead of him. This would be him leaving an extraordinary situation to get into another marvelous situation. However, the price for breaking free of Di Qian's control was incredibly devastating. There was only a wisp left of Su Ming's soul, and that wisp was still burning. At that moment, there were 2 paths before Su Ming. He could give up all form of resistance. With Sui Chen Zi's law in existence, he might have a chance of merging his soul together once more under the reversal of time and return to his physical body. However, there were a lot of unknowns in this. There was even a possibility that if he formed his soul once more under the reversal of time, all the souls that once existed within his own would also return. No one could say how this would end. There was another path as well, and in that one, Su Ming was certain that the situation of the seals forming once again in his soul would not happen. This path was one where he continued on. A glint appeared in all of the eyes within the 100,000 face that belonged to Su Ming. The situation had not derailed to the point where it was no longer part of his plan. During the 400 years of analysis, he had discovered several ways that might be dead ends but could also be points that led to new life. At that moment, the second path was one such way. Without any hesitation, Su Ming chose to walk it. At the instant his soul was completely burnt, the wave of impact that erupted from him was incredibly powerful. Yikang's will laughed coldly and did not try to stop it. He knew that this was Su Ming's final bout of madness. After that, he would surely die. I was dead to begin with. My soul is dead and cannot touch the sun. Then what will happen if a person whose soul is dead dies again? As the wave of impact from the burning of Su Ming's soul spread out, his soul covered 80 hundredths in one bout from the previous 67. A boom shot up in Su Ming's mind, and a new picture appeared in his head. He saw Western Ring Nebula's foreign land, right beyond the 100,000 golden seas and 100,000 galaxies. It was as if Su Ming's Atman was expanded endlessly at that instant and covered the entire foreign land. It even continued spreading out to cover Western Ring Nebula. However, the Western Ring Nebula before Su Ming's eyes was vastly different from his memories. This place was filled with tranquility and life. The essence of the worlds within the countless cultivation planets was abundant and sufficient. There were no cultivators on the planets, only ferocious beasts. It was as if this was a foreign galaxy that no cultivator had yet discovered. Su Ming was momentarily stunned. When he instinctively pulled back his Atman and it returned to his body, he discovered that the foreign land had disappeared. More accurately speaking, he had become the foreign land. Su Ming lowered his head. When he looked at himself, he saw that he was dressed in white. He had become a stranger. He was an old man with white hair, an unfamiliar existence whose eyes were filled with wisdom and an ancient air. With one thought, I can destroy the heavens. The universe instantly turned dark. The galaxy disappeared in an instant, as if everything had been destroyed. This was not Su Ming's voice, but he could sense that he was the one saying the words. During that instant, he suddenly understood. Once he occupied 8/10 of Yikang's Venus pathways, he saw Yikang's memories, and once he fused with them, he saw Sui Chen Zi. With one thought, I can give life to the universe. Su Ming's heart trembled. He saw a ray of light being born within that endless darkness after the galaxy had turned into a black, empty void. That light spread out and covered everything that Su Ming saw, chasing away all darkness. Cultivation planets were born, and lives appeared on them. With one thought, I can make all lives perish. As the third sentence was spoken, all lives were reduced to ashes, as if flames had swept past them. It was as if several millions of years had flowed past the universe. With one thought, I can give life to all manner of being. When that ancient voice spoke again, Su Ming's heart shuddered. He seemed to have come to a vague understanding of something. Those who can see my 4 great arts of divine essence have either made their stone monuments reach 9 million feet, or possessed 8/10 of Yikang. It doesn't matter how you manage to do it, as long as you understand the law I left behind within these 4 great arts of divine essence, then it will become your law. The more you understand, the more control you will have over this law. You only have 3 breaths. After 3 breaths, you must tell me what you have understood. Sui Chen Zi said flatly. Chapter 832, Yikang as his clone the first breath. As Su Ming was shocked and caught in a daze due to the 4 great arts of divine essence, they repeated themselves before his eyes. In that short span of a breath, they repeated themselves thousands of times. As the first breath passed by, Su Ming realized that he was no longer Sui Chen Zi. He seemed to be able to see a faint layer of black smoke coming from the white-robed and white-haired Sui Chen Zi. There were 100,000 faces within that black smoke, and all of them belonged to Su Ming. When the second breath arrived, the 100,000 faces formed by black smoke spread out from Sui Chen Zi's body. Once they gathered together behind him, Su Ming could feel that he now possessed a body, and he was no longer a lost soul in the world. Once the third breath came, Su Ming saw Sui Chen Zi's back. What appeared in his mind was still the shock he received due to the 4 divine essence arts. That shock seemed to have vaguely fused with his life, and he had a feeling that he had understood. After the 3 breaths, Sui Chen Zi, who had his back turned towards Su Ming, shook his head and gradually left into the distance. When Su Ming's body began to fade away, he suddenly spoke. The start of my life matrix is midwinter. The world is still, and there is no life there. It's as if a vast amount of snow had covered the earth, and all manner of lives ended. This is what you mean by with one thought, you can destroy the heavens, Su Ming mumbled, a light of understanding shining in his eyes. After midwinter, my life is that of bloody autumn. With blood, I will dye the sky red, turning it into the color of autumn and gain the will of autumn. This is a transition between life and death. It is the only state where death and life exists at the same time within my life matrix. It is not like the complete stillness within midwinter, but neither is it like the vast amount of life during the searing summer. Since both life and death exist at the same time, it is the state of all lives dying, as well as the state of all lives being reborn. This is what you mean when you say with one thought, you can give life to the universe. Su Ming was whispering absent-mindedly, as if he was not talking to anyone but himself. However, Sui Chen Zi, who had his back turned towards Su Ming in the distance, paused in his footsteps when he heard Su Ming say these 2 things. He kept still and unmoving, as if he thinking about Su Ming's words and waiting for the rest. The life matrix I came to understand is a path that moves from death to life, just like how midwinter moves towards spring, but the movement from spring to winter in the world is something that cannot be reversed. However, this is what I lack in my life matrix. Even if it is something that cannot be reversed, I still have to tread down this path. I was originally lost in my path after the bloody autumn. Now, I have come to understand. The searing summer after the bloody autumn should be filled with an abundance of life force. That life force is hot and can burn away everything. That life force is great and can illuminate all manner of lives. This life force might seem real, but in truth, it is fake. Even if it is real in a sense. It can burn me, and also use its heat to burn all the lives in the universe, extinguishing the fire of life within all the living beings. Perhaps before it does anything, it is a mere illusion, but once the lives are extinguished, it will become real. Summer. Summer. Burn all lives to light up my own life so that it would become greater. This is what you mean by with one thought, you can make all lives perish. Su Ming's eyes grew even brighter. This was just like how he had gained that unique epiphany when he was in Eastern Wasteland's tower all those years ago. Now, from the four great arts of divine essence, he had come to gain an epiphany that not even Sui Chenzi had expected. This was an epiphany that belonged solely to Su Ming. Sui Chenzi turned around slowly. At the instant he looked towards Su Ming mumbled his final string of words. After the searing summer would be spring. Spring, the time when all lives are revived, where all manner of lives will rise. This should be the first step for all life forms, but for me, this is the final step in my path from death to life. With the power of resurrection, I will complete my awakening. If I succeed, then with one thought, I'll be able to give life to all manner of living, but if I fail, then with one thought, I will make all lives perish. A glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes and he lifted his eyes to look at Sui Chenzi. He looked at the old man with white hair and wisdom as well as old age in his eyes, and a firm persistence of his beliefs appeared in Su Ming's face. This is my understanding. At the instant he said these words, a slightly strange look appeared on Sui Chenzi's face. He seemed as if he wanted to say something, but in the end, he could not do so. Instead, with some form of epiphany in his eyes along with a sort of dazed look on his face, his body gradually faded away. Almost at the instant Sui Chenzi's body vanished, the space around them also disappeared, and Yikang's low roars echoed in Su Ming's heart once again. A powerful will swept through the area, and booms caused by it crashing into Su Ming's soul could be heard rising into the air. However, in Su Ming's senses, that sound seemed to be incredibly far away from him. At that moment, his soul was completely burnt. However, even as his entire soul was burnt, he noticed that he did not disappear. I was dead to begin with, and even my soul was dead. What would happen if I died again? Su Ming mumbled. It's thought. This is my thought. Su Ming whispered softly. He remembered the signs that were known as Abyss Awakening when he first came to control time. When Dao Yuan came, when the three seals in Su Ming's soul were released, and when that voice telling him that the world was built for Abyss emerged in his head, he could sense that he had moved into the true state of Abyss Awakening. Only then was he able to possess the Crimson Python Phoenix in the barren lands of divine essence and form his new physical body, though Su Ming had not known about it before he possessed the creature. It had practically been a natural instinct. The Duke of Crimson Flame once said that the Abyss Builders can revive the dead. This is an inborn ability that snatches the power of creation from the universe's hands. It does not conform to the will of heaven, and neither is it in harmony with the universe. I've been thinking about where this ability came from all this while. Now I understand, after awakening to Abyss, what will awaken again is the ability to build the Abyss, and to build life. So Abyss Awakening requires a person to die once, truly, completely, and absolutely. As Su Ming mumbled while coming to understand this, a wisp of his soul reappeared, and as it swiftly expanded, it instantly became a complete soul. This form of completion was different from before he burned his soul, but Su Ming could not tell just what was different about himself. He could only sense that something about him seemed to have risen to a higher level. It was as if the state of being alive and dead existed at the same time in his soul. He was no longer just a dead soul, but was something dead that possessed life. It was just like how he had come to understand the will of autumn. At that instant, Su Ming became aware that he had truly moved into the will of autumn. Now, not only had he understood it, but his soul had also managed to obtain it. From then on, the presence of Bright Yang would no longer be a terrifying thing that could wipe him off, because Su Ming's soul was no longer completely dead. It now possessed life. It was caught between life and death, just like autumn. It was also during that moment that Yikang's enraged roars as well as its cries of surprise filled with disbelief grew close instead of remaining in the distance. They echoed in the area clearly. Yikang's voice was filled with shock, puzzlement, and astonishment towards Su Ming's transformation. Su Ming's soul had occupied 8/10 of all the golden Venus pathways by then, and it had the heart that was filled with the aura of death at the center surrounded. As Su Ming awakened to abyss and his soul became complete, he began to possess Yikang once again without any hesitation. This time, he was clearly much faster than before. As he fought back against Yikang's will, he also noticed that he seemed to be able to control some power that did not belong to him. It was the power of law, the law Sui Chen Zi had left behind before his death. When that understanding surfaced in Su Ming's heart, runic symbols suddenly appeared within the right eyes of all his 100,000 faces. Those runic symbols did not exist before, but even though they had just appeared, there was not a hint of unexpectedness within the faces. The instant they appeared, the 100,000 runic symbols within the right eyes of the 100,000 faces flew out at the same time. Endless rays of black light spread out from them, and each of them turned into a black shadow. Su Ming had seen such shadows before. They were those that could kill all the people within the world with 100,000 stone monuments. At that moment, 100,000 of such shadows appeared and bowed at Su Ming. As they did so, he clearly sensed that he could control them. Sui Chen Zi was hoping that a person who could successfully possess Yikang would appear, or else he wouldn't have provided help when I possessed a third, a half, and 8/10 of those Venus pathways. At the instant those shadows appeared, a thought rose in Su Ming's head. Immediately, the 100,000 shadows charged towards Yikang's will with furious roars. As they crashed into it with loud booming sounds ringing in the air, and as Yikang roared madly, Su Ming immediately started possessing, raising his coverage from 8/10 to 85/100. The parts that had turned black from the golden now occupied most of the territory. Besides the heart at the center, only very little was still shining in gold when Su Ming looked around himself. 86, 88, 90, 91, 92, 93. The 100,000 shadows were formed by Sui Chen Zi's law. As they fought against Yikang, Su Ming's soul swiftly spread out. As time passed, Su Ming's soul possessed 95/100 of all the Venus pathways. By then, besides the golden heart that was filled with the aura of death, all the other Venus pathways that were previously gold had all turned black. All of them had become Su Ming's property. The power of his soul spread out, and the waves of power that were stirred up caused Yikang to let out a cry of despair. It was also during that instant that besides the stone monuments that belonged to the 90-something people who received the test, failed, and were chased out at the same time, almost all the stone monuments erupted forth with a powerful ray of lights. 100,000 stone monuments. Besides the small portion of those who had surpassed 1 million feet, the other 90,000-something stone monuments shone with a light that spread far and wide. That light was brilliant and piercing to the eyes. As it shone, numerous figures with shock and cries of surprise were forced out of their stone monuments. 90,000-something people. These 90,000-something people who wanted to obtain the divine essence and who had been immersed in the world formed by their memories in the stone monuments all appeared. This scene shook all the people's hearts, causing them to be unable to help themselves. They cried out in surprise. This was something that had never happened since the time Western Ring Nebula's foreign land was born. What happened? How could this be? I was in the world in the stone monument just now, but I was forcefully expelled by a will that I could not fight against. Could it be? Could it be that someone has reached 10 million feet? That's impossible. There's no stone monument here that is 10 million feet tall. Look. That is. Our stone monuments, they are. Cries of surprise rang in the air. The last one was especially piercing, and immediately, all the people in the place were stunned. To their shock, they discovered that besides their own name, another one had suddenly appeared on their stone monuments. That name was above theirs, as if the owner of that name was the true owner of all the stone monuments, the true master of the land with the 100,000 stone monuments. The additional name was Mo Su. Ju Kang stood by the side and stared at Su Ming's stone monument blankly. Unbidden, the image of Su Ming listening to his experiences seriously when he had just arrived in this place appeared in his mind. Chapter 833, Yikang as his clone. As Ju Kang looked over, the 90-something people who had taken the test to make their stone monuments reach 1 million feet and failed at the same time looked swiftly towards the stone monument which had yet to go down in height. With expressions that had changed drastically, they stared at the monument that belonged to the person which had received the test with them, but was the only one who did not come out. They clearly remembered that this person was known as Mo Su. At that moment, his name had appeared on nearly 100,000 stone monuments. This shocked everyone, and within their hearts, countless guesses arose, each of which could make their breath quicken. The returnees weren't the only ones to notice this. Gradually, more took note of it, and after a moment, all the cultivators who were forced out of their worlds in their stone monuments turned their gazes towards one of the many stone monuments on the land. That was Mo Su's stone monument. The buzzing of voices gradually dispersed in the land of the 100,000 stone monuments, replaced by death-like silence. All the people watched Su Ming's stone monument, and as their expressions changed, myriads of thoughts passed through their heads. It was especially so for the people who had come for Su Ming's life. Their expressions were incredibly complicated. Perhaps to the others, Mo Su's name and status were unfamiliar, but these people had come solely for him. If it had not been because of the laws in this place interfering with their actions, they would have attacked him a long time ago. Their understanding of Su Ming was much greater compared to the others, but due to that greater knowledge, their feelings were even more complicated, and they were even more troubled. As the people in the land with the 100,000 stone monuments fell silent, within the 100,000 Venus pathways in the trees of the equally numbered galaxies, Yikang truly panicked when Su Ming successfully possessed 95/100ths of the Venus pathways. Its angered roars brought with them the fright from the bottom of its heart, along with the wariness and terror. Its roars echoed non-stop. This was because once Su Ming occupied all of the golden Venus pathways, which caused them to turn black, his soul began his final possession of the 100,000 hearts that were exactly the same, filled with the aura of death and located at the center of the Venus pathways. Once Su Ming successfully possessed those hearts, he would have completed a nigh impossible possession. From then on, there would no longer be Yikang, only Su Ming's strongest clone of Yikang. No! You can't do this! You lowlife! You shameless thief! You can't do this! I, Yikang, am the one and only existence in the universe. I am a life form that stands above all in the universe. What right do you have to possess me? Yikangs will let out a hysterical, enraged roar. Booming sounds echoed in the air, stirring up endless ripples that spread out and swept up in all directions, shaking the 100,000 galaxies so badly that they started trembling violently. In fact, a large amount of cracks appeared in space, as if those galaxies were about to crumble. The booming sounds came from Yikang's hysterical will crashing viciously against Sui Chen Zi's 100,000 shadows. However, it did not matter whether it were Yikang's roars or the booming sounds in the area, they did not manage to make Su Ming falter for even a moment. With the 100,000 shadows formed by Sui Chen Zi's law fighting against Yikang's will, it was simply unable to stop Su Ming's actions. As Su Ming's soul spread out, not only did he completely cover all of the golden Venus pathways, but his soul also surged forward from all directions towards the golden hearts within their respective Venus pathways that were within the 100,000 trees. It was as if a golden sheet of drawing paper had been stained by black ink, with only the spot at the center having yet escaped the calamity. At that moment, though, that boundless black ink was swiftly spreading towards the only empty spot, intending to completely dye that piece of paper black. 100,000 galaxies roared. 100,000 trees trembled viciously. 100,000 Yikang's wills roared and howled. As their voices echoed in the air, Su Ming's heart touched those 100,000 hearts that were filled with the aura of death. At the instant he did so, a boom rang out in his soul once again, and it was the same sound that he'd heard after he occupied a third, a half, and an 8/10 of the Venus pathways. Once again, a new illusory picture emerged in his soul. When Su Ming had occupied a third of the Venus pathways, he had seen Yikang's soul and its gigantic body. He had been incredibly shocked, but it was also at that moment that he learned that the tree was known as Yikang. As time passed, when Su Ming occupied half of those Venus pathways, he saw a scene that brought him an even greater shock and even despair. It had been the 100,000 galaxies, 100,000 golden seas, and 100,000 trees that he saw. In that scene, Su Ming sensed the difference between what was real and what was false, the difference between illusions and reality, but he still did not give up and made his soul successfully occupy 8/10 of all the Venus pathways. During that instant, Su Ming saw Sui Chen-zi. He had even become him at that instant and sensed his 4 divine essence arts, and in the end, verified his life matrix, thereby mastering Sui Chen-zi's law. It could be said that if these 3 pictures had not appeared in his soul, then Su Ming would have definitely been unable to reach this point, which was a point that no one had managed to reach since ancient times. The illusions that appeared in his soul those 3 times were like 3 powerful boosts of power, while also acting as 3 great tests. As long as one got through those tests, then they would be able to obtain help. All of this had clearly been left behind by someone beforehand. His goal was naturally to make things slightly easier for when the descendants of the later generations came to possess Yikang, but he only made things slightly easier. If Su Ming had not done the things he did, then even with those 3 aids, he would have still been unable to reach his current state. Clearly, the person who had left behind all those was Sui Chen-zi. At that moment, as the picture emerged in his soul, Su Ming clearly knew that this was the 4th time Sui Chen-zi would help him, and it was also likely that this would be the last time. Booms rang in Su Ming's soul, and as they did so, he saw a broken universe. That universe was boundless and limitless. Su Ming did not know precisely how big it was, but he had a vague feeling that this was a true world. It was a gigantic, complete true world, so great that its size could not be described with words. Su Ming might not be able to describe how big the universe was, but he could use what he knew about the 4 great true worlds to compare them. This was also a true world. Yet this true world was damaged in many ways. Booms from the universe falling apart echoed in Su Ming's heart. They continued without stop, becoming louder. When he cast a glance over, the endless planets within that boundless galaxy were rapidly falling apart and turning into rubble. The countless lives within them were also reduced to dust at that instant. It was as if the galaxy was dying, the planets were falling into destruction, and all manner of living were returning to the embrace of Earth. Everything within this universe had moved to the end of their path, just as a human's life, and it was rapidly heading towards the absolute end. Even the cultivation planets that still had an abundant amount of life force a breath ago were surrounded by the aura of death within a breath, and the entire galaxy was instantly occupied by a dense aura of death. The final world in the universe, too, cannot escape the disaster of death. I, Sui Chen-zi, also am powerless to fight against it, huh? I failed. An ancient voice thick with sorrow echoed in the universe. Su Ming saw Sui Chen-zi walking into the dying galaxy while dressed in white. His hair was a mess, and he was laughing long and hard at the sky. However, when that laughter fell into his ears, there was clearly grief contained within it that was difficult to describe with words. But I have also succeeded. In the midst of Sui Chen-zi's anguished laughter, Su Ming looked at him in a daze, and he saw a shard falling off Sui Chen-zi's face. Then, an endless amount of them fell off Sui Chen-zi's whole body. He looked as if he was formed of countless shards. At that moment, as they fell, his body shattered to pieces. If I die, then this world will turn to dust. If I close my eyes, then this cosmos will have no light. Descendant who inherits my divine essence, remember how I die, and remember that the laws governing the operations of the universe also die, as well as that the universe does not possess thought. I failed, that's why I am destroyed, but I also succeeded, which is why I give you hope. As Sui Chen-zi laughed, his body turned into numerous shards, which then transformed into a whirlwind. When it spread out, Su Ming immediately saw that only the heart remained from Sui Chen-zi's crumbled body. It was a golden heart. When Su Ming saw it, he felt as if she saw a whole world. This was an indescribable feeling, and Su Ming only had a similar experience once, when he saw the numerous life forms from the World Stone when he was still in Crimson Flame Planet. However, the feeling he had right now was much stronger than what he sensed from the World Stone. In fact, the difference between the intensity of the two was difficult to compare. It was as if one was the bright sun, and the other just the flickering light from a firefly. Su Ming was shocked by this scene. He looked at the heart in the whirlwind, and suddenly, though he did not know whether this was just a figment of his imagination, he saw a seed on that heart. The seed possessed 10 colors, and it was hidden within that golden light. Before Su Ming could see it clearly, Sui Chen-zi's body completely dispersed in an abrupt manner, and the galaxy as well as the cosmos tumbled forward, charging towards that golden heart. As they did so, the galaxy and the cosmos experienced continuous destruction. Their laws were shattered, their rules disappeared, the lives within them passed away, their planets died, the flow of time became chaotic as the galaxy and cosmos tumbled forward to gather at the heart. In fact, the memories of countless life forms before their deaths also turned into fragmented thoughts. They turned into an invisible windstorm in this dying galaxy, until this former true world surged completely into the golden heart before Su Ming's eyes, and the spot where the galaxy had been located previously turned into a void that had no life. Boom! Su Ming saw with his own eyes as the golden heart that had gathered together a true world turned into a gigantic vortex. There was an endless amount of cracks beyond the vortex, and by the looks of it, it was Western Ring Nebula's foreign land. Before Su Ming's shock could fade away, the scene he saw next brought him an even greater shock that surpassed the totality of what he'd experienced through the scenes that were shown to him when he occupied a third, a half, and 8/10 of the Venus pathways. He saw a gigantic tree that towered into the heavens. With a great presence, a crazed ferociousness, and a mighty pressure that surpassed Xianxia's, it had been born within the vortex. In the span of a breath, its size surpassed the vortex, as if the tree was devouring it as its nutrients and the divine essence within it so it could grow. The big tree surpassed the size of Yikang Su Ming saw, but it was clearly Yikang. However, its color was not just purely purple. Instead, it had all 10 colors. During that instant, a sound of a shoot sprouting that was akin to the sound a baby made when it was born came from the tree. Kang. These were just 2 indistinct syllables, but there was a terrifying might contained within them that made it seem as if with just one thought, the tree could destroy Su Ming several millions of times. His heart trembled at that. It was powerful. It was indescribably powerful. It was the universe's supreme power, and had in fact surpassed the universe's strongest power. The complete Yikang, Su Ming mumbled as his pupils shrank. Chapter 834. Yikang as his clone. This was Yikang when it was just born. Su Ming looked at Yikang, who was born by absorbing nutrients from Xianxia's cosmos once he died and his body shattered. He looked at the tree that possessed all 10 colors, at how its light shone without end, and at the mighty pressure as well as its appearance that was so incredibly powerful that no words could describe them. At that instant, Su Ming felt as if his mind had stopped functioning. From the start, he had expected that Yikang had an incredibly great background, but he still did not think that it could be this unbelievable. What I'm possessing is such a powerful life form, Su Ming mumbled. If he had known that Yikang was such an inconceivable being, he did not know whether he would still have had the willpower to choose to possess it. Fortunately, what he was possessing was not the complete Yikang, just 1/10 of it. What was more, judging by the looks of it, it was also heavily wounded, or else, Su Ming knew that even if it was just 1 of the 10 of the complete Yikang, he would have definitely not been able to succeed in possessing it. In the mid of his shock, a question immediately rose in Su Ming's heart. But it's already so inconceivably strong, just who could possibly injure it badly enough to shatter the complete Yikang into pieces? At the instant this question rose, Su Ming saw his answer. He saw Yikang's body growing several times larger right after the instant it let out a sound that was akin to a newborn's cry. At first glance, he could not see where its end was. It was as if half of the entire space had been occupied. Yet suddenly, an ancient voice Su Ming was familiar with came from within Yikang's body. With one thought, I can affect the universe. With one thought, I can affect the heavens. With one thought, I can affect all manner of lives. With one thought, I can affect all things in the universe. This voice naturally belonged to Xianxia, whose body had already been destroyed and who only had a heart left. His voice shot out of Yikang's tree trunk and echoed in the void, bringing with it a carefree air and a wave of resolve that lingered in space for a long time, refusing to disappear. Yikang's gigantic body started trembling viciously. As the 10-colored light shone brilliantly, the tree found that it could no longer grow any taller. Pained whimpers that sounded like a baby's cries came from Yikang. Before long, it probably would have been able to turn into an incredibly terrifying existence after it devoured Xianxia's divine essence. But it had only just been born. It might be complete, but it was like an infant and had not fully grown. Its shrill whimpers spread in all directions, and when they fell into Su Ming's ears, his breathing quickened. I was unable to kill you and could only allow you to live in my soul, then destroy me. I knew that you would be born the moment I died, and while I might be unable to kill you, but at the instant you are born, you will become me, and I will be you. I will not walk on the path my 8 good friends did. Instead, I will use what I have prepared for 100,000 years to injure you mortally. With one thought, I will have 1 million lives be born. Sui Chen Zi's voice abruptly became stronger. As it echoed in the air, numerous cracks appeared on the tree, and it crumbled from within in a bang. It turned into 1 million parts. The golden heart, which was the accumulation of Sui Chen Zi's divine essence throughout his entire life, turned into 1 million hearts at that instant. At the same time, Yikang, which had been shredded into 1 million parts, found that each of its colors possessed 100,000 fragments, and as it shattered, its fragmented pieces were individually suppressed and sealed under the 1 million golden hearts. As a boom that shook the entire void echoed through the area, Yikang's 1 million fragments tumbled backwards and were swept into the foreign land, which still remained as it was, while those fragments disappeared without a trace. I failed, that's why I died, but I also succeeded. I left behind a chance to break divine essence's disaster for the future generation. If any of you, the descendants of the future generation, obtain my divine essence, remember. As Sui Chen Zi's voice gradually faded away, Su Ming was shocked by the things he saw. However, the truth that he saw did not fade away. Instead, something new occurred. Su Ming saw time pass. He had no idea how many years had went by when a faint and weak growl came from the foreign land. That growl contained an unwillingness to admit defeat, madness, and a burning hate that could scorch the heavens. Sui Chen Zi, you old coot. You can't kill me, and neither can you suppress me for eternity. I've already been born, and my life is already in this universe. It's already written in destiny that I will walk out of your seal. Even if you divided my body into 10 parts and because of that, 10 different wills were born within me, someday, all those 10 wills will fuse together once more, and at that time, I, Yikang, will appear. Even if you injured me badly, your divine essence is still around. Since you left a law for the future generations to obtain your divine essence after your death, then I can borrow it and make this place into the source that will heal me. The more people come to this place to obtain your divine essence, the more they will help me heal. All their epiphanies, their cultivation bases, and their lives will belong to me. As that voice echoed in the air, everything before Su Ming's eyes disappeared. He woke up from the illusion in his soul. His soul had already covered all the golden Venus pathways, and at that moment, it had already fused with the golden hearts within the 100,000 galaxies. His possession had reached 97 hundredths from the previous 95. So this is the truth. Su Ming remembered Zhu Kang mentioning before that this place was a huge scam. By the looks of it, that scam was not laid out by Sui Chen Zi, but had turned into such after it was used by Yikang. It doesn't matter what is the truth. It's not important whether this place is a scam or not. The important thing is, I've already possessed 97 hundredths of this place. My Yikang clone is about to be complete. Su Ming's soul continuously spread out and fused with the golden heart. With the 100,000 shadows formed by Sui Chen Zi's law still blocking Yikang's will, Su Ming progressed incredibly smoothly. At the instant his possession reached 98 hundredths from the previous 97, Yikang descended into complete madness. Its will roared hysterically, with despair and lunacy contained within it. You are the one who forced me. All of this is because you forced me. I absolutely won't let you succeed. Even if I will lose the chance to devour the other 9, even if I will lose all my consciousness because of this and will only have a portion of my soul left that will be devoured by the other 9 as they please, I will still absolutely not allow you to possess me, this noble Yikang's body. Yikang laughed madly. There was a resolve within its laughter and a will that said it would die with Su Ming. Great Yikang art. At the instant it said these words, a shrill scream of pain immediately came from the near 100,000 people within the world with 100,000 stone monuments. As the screams of pain echoed in the air, the people around the area looked at the spot from which the screams came from, and to their shock, they saw a middle-aged man rapidly rotting away. Bits of purplish light were coming from his body while it was rapidly being absorbed by the stone monument. In the blink of an eye, the middle-aged cultivator's body disappeared, without a single trace of it left. Soon after, screams of pain rang in the air once again. As they rose and fell, nearly 10,000 people cried out at the same time. Their bodies were all rapidly disappearing, being absorbed by their stone monuments. During that instant, when the near 10,000 stone monuments absorbed the corresponding number of people's flesh, blood, lives, and everything else about them, numerous cracks rang down the monuments. The air filled with the sound of cracking, and near 10,000 stone monuments shattered into pieces with a bang. As they fell apart, purplish smoke spread out from within, and as the shattered debris shot through the air, it disappeared from the land. Due to this, from then on, this place would only have 90,000 stone monuments. Xianxia will swelled up exponentially at that instant, and wisps of purplish smoke appeared out of thin air. There were nearly 10,000 wisps of that purplish smoke, their number naturally identical to the number of the cultivators who had died. As those wisps rapidly gathered together, they turned into a gigantic purple tree. That tree was naturally Xianxia's soul. Xianxia. At the instant its soul appeared, the gigantic purple tree let out a low roar. When it uttered the first syllable, the 100,000 shadows that were formed by Xianxia's law shuddered and were instantly frozen, unable to move. When the second syllable was spoken, without the 100,000 shadows' protection, Su Ming's soul immediately felt a strong impact crashing into him as he was possessing the golden hearts within those 100,000 Venus pathways. I paid an incredible price in exchange for the law to freeze. This means that from now on, there will no longer be any chance for me to recover. I can only watch as the other 9 continuously recover and wait for the one who will awaken among them to devour me. I've sacrificed so much, so I won't accept not being able to kill you. Xianxia will rushed over in a mad dash. At the instant it crashed into Su Ming's soul, the final part of the possession which he had planned and prepared for hundreds of years was executed without any hesitation. Black fragment. Su Ming's soul let out a low shout. The black fragment. The unknown treasure that had accompanied Su Ming while he was in Yin Death region and had fused with his soul to follow him to the barren lands of divine essence was formed within his soul at the moment Su Ming called out to it. This item was a mysterious entity. Even if Su Ming had completely burned his soul previously, it still existed within him. At that moment, when it manifested, it returned to its original form and turned into a negligible black stone fragment. Deceive it. The instant the black stone fragment appeared was also the moment Xianxia crashed into Su Ming. As booming sounds echoed in the air, the golden hearts that originally numbered 100,000 within the equally numbered golden Venus pathways in those trees in the galaxies suddenly increased drastically by several thousand folds. They appeared within each set of the golden Venus pathways, and when added together, they reached 100 million hearts with the aura of death within those 100,000 galaxies. Among those 100 million hearts, only 100,000 were real. The others were all fake, but the presence each of them gave off were the exact same. There was not the slightest difference among them. This was the mysterious ability that the black fragmented excelled in, the ability to deceive all manner of life. Su Ming did not know how long this treasure could deceive Xianxia, which was why he had not dared to use it previously. Instead, only when he was closest to success, when the value of a breath was even more precious than before, did he bring it out. This is the seed of life extermination. Did it also fail? This is impossible. How could it fail? How could there only be a fragment left? There was disbelief in Xianxia's voice, along with deep despair. It needed 10 breaths before it could find the real Su Ming among the 100 million hearts. If it had needed these 10 breaths to search for Su Ming beforehand, it would have been nothing to it. But now, time was critical. 10 breaths would determine the winner and the loser. I lost. The 9 wills that have been separated from me. I have been possessed. Destroy him, and help me take revenge. As Xianxia's voice of despair echoed in the air, Su Ming's possession of the true 100,000 golden hearts reached 99 hundredths, and then 100. The golden Venus pathways and the golden hearts were all black. Chapter 835. The deep slumber before he was reborn. Complete possession. At the instant Su Ming's possession was fully completed, Yikang's will withered away. In the blink of an eye, it disappeared without a trace, causing the purple Yikang tree to become Su Ming's clone from then on. It was also during the instant Su Ming completed his possession that vast waves of ancient memories surged into his soul like a flood that had broken through a dam. Those memories were incredibly jumbled up, and a great swelling sensation rose within Su Ming. It was painful, as if those memories were imprinting themselves deeply into his soul. That pain could not be described with words. However, at the same time, Su Ming had a strong sensation that his soul was swiftly growing stronger. As those memories gathered together and his soul continued becoming stronger, he sensed that his cultivation base changed drastically. It was as if he had suddenly come to understand the changes in the world within an instant, and the trains of thought that had been previously blocked opened up. 100,000 galaxies. 100,000 golden seas. 1,000 Yikang trees within 100,000 planets. All of these things shook, and Su Ming sensed that at the instant he turned into Yikang, he could feel numerous other galaxies that existed beyond these 100,000. There were 9 wills that were on equal ground to his in this galaxy. Each of them contained the power of 100,000 galaxies. At that moment, they were gathering and surrounding the galaxies that belonged to Su Ming, as if they wanted to rush in, but were also hesitant to do so. He did not need to think much to be able to tell that these 9 wills that were lingering about beyond the area he controlled was the other wills of the great Yikang tree that had been torn apart. Yikang had been split into 10 parts all those years ago, and these parts used Western Ring Nebula's foreign land to heal themselves. If Su Ming had not appeared, then perhaps after a long period of time had passed, they would have devoured each other and conglomerated into the real Yikang. However, since Su Ming appeared and successfully possessed the purple Yikang, and the purple Yikang sent out those ripples before its death, the other 9 wills came over in an attempt to devour him beforehand. If Su Ming was interrupted in the critical moment before he managed to form his clone and was devoured by the 9 wills, then even if he possessed the purple Yikang, the results would still be of no good to him. He would only become part of the true Yikang's soul. Originally, these 9 wills would plan to rush into the 100,000 galaxies that belonged to the purple Yikang and execute a brutal process of devouring Su Ming and fusing with him, until the purple Yikang Su Ming possessed would be completely devoured. Then, these 9 will become much stronger. Before the purple Yikang died, it had sent a divine thought to the 9 wills with exactly this intention, because it had made a promise with the other 9 Yikang souls before. Before the 10 of them fully recovered, they would not devour each other. They would wait until they were all complete before they did so. Only then would the true Yikang be eventually born without any injuries, and would even be much stronger than before. That was why if the purple Yikang had not sent the divine thought to them, the other Yikang souls would not have come forward. However, the purple Yikang did not expect that Su Ming's possession towards it was not the traditional possession that would wipe away its soul because the possessor only wanted its body. Thus, it had miscalculated. The traditional possession would cause a great aversion within the 9 other wills, and they would immediately rush in to devour Su Ming. However, Su Ming's possession was the Abyss Builder's inborn ability. This sort of possession not only wanted to take over the target's body, but also their soul, and even the brand of their lives. It was a possession that aimed to gather together a body from the purple Yikang's form, and that body would be identical to Yikang, in terms of both its presence or signs of life. It was just like how Su Ming had possessed one of the 3 Crimson Python Phoenixes all those years ago and the remaining 2 had not noticed him. Instead, they had always thought that he was their companion, since even his presence had not changed. This was the Abyss Builder's possession. It was also the reason why the purple Yikang failed even after it died. To be precise, the Abyss Builder's possession was divided into 3 steps. The first step was to create confusion by blending the false with what was real. It could be seen as the invasion of the soul, just like what had happened to the purple Yikang just now and what had happened to the Crimson Python Phoenix that had devoured Su Ming's soul all those years ago. The falsehood here was referring to Su Ming's soul, and the reality was referring to his target's body and soul. The second step was to substitute what was real with a fake. He would completely possess his target's body, soul, mark of life, and even life matrix, in a manner akin of exchanging the sun and moon in the sky. The Su Ming right now was at the final stages of this step. Once he completed the possession, he would have changed the sun and moon in the sky with a fake. The main point of this possession was to change, not to wipe off. That was why it had the third step. To turn what was decaying into something amazing. The decaying part symbolized the past, and the amazing part symbolized the future. The change between what was decaying and what was amazing was akin to a process of rebirth. It would use the decaying parts of the past to be reborn into something amazing. This step was precisely what Su Ming was prepared to do at that moment. In a sense, there were too many intrinsic differences between Su Ming and Yikang. But from another point of view, they were the same. Yikang used Sui Chenzi's death to be born and devoured his divine essence. Su Ming was reborn within Yikang's body. He absorbed what Yikang had absorbed and also devoured all that was Yikang. If one looked at it that way, the Abyss Builders were even more domineering than Yikang. Because you were born by devouring the universe's divine essence, and I will devour your life to live, Su Ming mumbled. As the windstorm of jumbled-up memories in his soul continued imprinting themselves in his heart and body, Su Ming's understanding towards the Abyss Builder's inborn ability to possess others became even greater. After all, since ancient times, Su Ming was the only one among the Abyss Builders who could devour something like Yikang, which was an only existence in the universe. Abyss Builders. Just like how small fish eat shrimps to live, while big fish eat small fish. This is the law of the jungle. I didn't expect that this idiom would be portrayed so vividly in the Abyss Builder's inborn ability. The black Venus pathways and the black hearts within the 100,000 purple Yikang trees in the equally numbered galaxies turned into 100,000 faces of Su Ming at that moment. As he mumbled to himself, he found the reason as to why the other 9 Yikang wills were lingering around the area of his perception. To their senses, my presence is not that much different compared to that of the purple Yikang. But since the third step still isn't complete, there are still some differences. That should be why they're lingering about and won't leave. This phenomenon will last until I complete the third step in this possession. Once I turn what is decaying into something astonishing, it will end. The eyes of Su Ming's faces shone at the same time and revealed a piercingly cold glare. I need time. This might not take long, or it could take an eternity. My soul will also descend into a deep sleep because of this. After all, the purple Yikang is not like the crimson python phoenix, where I could instantly form my clone. The purple Yikang is too big. In this period of time, which might last for a long time, but also might just be a short while, the 9 wills will become a lurking threat. If they continue lingering around the area, I don't want to use my life as a gambling chip and bet that they won't come and devour me. Fortunately, I have the black stone fragment. This seed of life extermination, which is what the purple Yikang called it, seems to be from the same generation as the bald crane based on what it said. That's why Yikang had mentioned an also when it said those words previously. Did it also fail? The mysteries of the ancient time of Sui Chenzi's era will slowly reveal themselves before me as I possess the purple Yikang. At this moment, I no longer have the wills from Yin Death region manipulating me, and I don't have Di Qian trying to control me and using me in his plan. From now on, I am me. The only thing I need to worry about is that Di Qian will definitely not accept that his plan to lie in wait and steal an Abyss Builder's body had just failed like this. And since he can no longer control my soul, he will definitely choose to use his full strength to plant his backup plan in my physical body, which is within the land of immortals right now. He knows that my physical body is my foundation. In the end, I will have to return for it. If he keeps watch over it, he will be watching over my core. But, if my physical body is the core of my being, then it is also Di Tianesse life. The current Su Ming was different from who he was in the past. He was now like a fish who had returned to the sea, a tiger who had returned to the forest, a dragon who had returned to the clouds. It was confidence and temperament that would naturally appear within a person after his fate was no longer controlled by someone else and he gained full control over his own self. Only at that moment could Su Ming truly be considered as Su Ming. As he mumbled softly to himself, a burst of light erupted forth from the black stone fragment with a bang in accordance to his will. It immediately manifested the purple Yikang's soul and presence to make up for what Su Ming had yet to complete in the third step of his possession. When there were no longer any differences between his soul and the presence Yikang, Su Ming sent his divine thought outwards. There was a cultivator that wanted to possess me and almost succeeded, but he still failed in the end. I am still me. The promise we made with our souls is still in effect. Now, leave these 100,000 galaxies of mine. The time for when we finally devour and fuse with each other has yet to arrive. As Su Ming's divine thought and the presence of Yikang's soul, which was formed by the black stone fragments, spread out furiously, the 9 wills formed from the portions of Yikang's soul that were lingering beyond Su Ming's 100,000 galaxies gradually faded away. After a moment, they disappeared from his perception. As the 9 wills of Yikang's soul faded away, the edges of the 100,000 galaxies where Su Ming was starting to show signs of merging together. They were gradually turning into one. At the same time, the Yikang tree that had been separated into 100,000 parts also started showing signs of gathering together as the galaxies slowly merged together. Su Ming gradually fell into deep sleep. When I awaken once more, I can tell that this clone of mine will be even stronger. My level of cultivation base will surpass what I have now, and this Yikang clone of mine will become the foundation for me to become the strongest in the future. I look forward to how I will be different when I wake up, Su Ming mumbled. All 100,000 of his faces slowly shut their eyes, and a fusion, a rebirth, a serendipity, and the final step of the formation for Yikang's clone began.